This is All Things Fitness and Wellness, uniting industry thought leaders and fitfluencers on the mission to inspire innovation and encourage people to live a life fit and well. Brought to you by the British Columbia Personal Training Institute. Learn how to train, gain, and retain clients. Visit bcpti.ca. On today's episode, we welcome Dr. Darian Parker. Darian offers a wealth of expertise with a doctorate in sports education leadership with a focus on behavior modification, along with a master's and bachelor's in kinesiology. Adding to his accolades, he's a certified personal trainer accredited by the NSCA and was named the 2023 IDEA Personal Trainer of the Year. Presently, Darian co-owns Epic Leisure Management, and his live virtual personal training venture caters to notable U.S. business leaders. Beyond these achievements, he's also the voice behind Dr. D's Social Network, a podcast fostering authentic, candid conversations with individuals from around the world. On the show today, Darian not only opens up about his personal story of being a military child, moving often in more ways than one, as he had incredibly active parents, but also takes the opportunity to express strong opinions about where the fitness industry could improve with an equal readiness to offer well-thought-out solutions. Before we get to the episode, get your reps in on the like and subscribe button. We have weekly podcast episodes featuring industry thought leaders and influencers. Plus, we're continuing our gym and wellness haven tours with inspiring founder stories. I'm your host, Chrissy Van, and this is ATFW. So first of all, Dr. D's Social Network podcast, I have to know out of the gate, who did your intro? Is it your brother? Because I know that was the song when you went for your acceptance speech. I was like, this is the raddest intro to a podcast I've ever heard in my life.
It is my brother I did walk out to one of his songs during my acceptance of the award. And my brother and I are very close. And when I started my podcast, I said, I need a good intro song, something not generic. I need it to be very personal. And to the show, he's like, I got you. And my brother is a professional hip hop artist. He's been doing it for a long time. He tours the world and does plays and symphonies. I mean, he's an amazing person. So he hooked me up with an awesome intro. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's one of those things. I listen to a lot of podcasts and then I was like, I need to rewind and listen to this again. Yeah. I feel like we need to release the single of your podcast.
It's good. Everybody always asks me, they're like, I love the intro. It's so cool.
Well, of course, Darian, we have you not just to talk about the epic intro music that follows you in your life, but the fact we're coming off the heels of IDEA 2023 Personal Trainer of the Year. Massive congratulations to you, first of all.
Thank you very much, Chrissy. Appreciate it.
Well, and being recognized by our peers, I think there is such a tremendous power in that energy that we receive. That exchange was something that we felt in the room. And you are somebody that I'm really excited to learn more about your story. You mentioned that you were in that world of dad in the military. What did that look like for you growing up? What was the lifestyle there?
I would say fitness was definitely a big part of the lifestyle. Both of my parents were very physically active. They still are. And, my dad, he was always on different intramural teams like basketball, softball and stuff in the military. So I grew up on bases all over the United States and internationally. So I would always see my dad playing sports and being active. And that just always did something to me. I always felt like that's something I wanted to emulate. And my mom would run the bases with us and baseball and stuff. And so it was just always a part of our life. My brother as well. We were all athletes. And so it just felt like this is where I was going to be headed, regardless of the situation.
It's incredible to have those values instilled from a young age. I'm curious, how was it for you? Because I understand in that type of career path as a parent, that's a lot of moving for your kids. So was fitness something that really helped you connect with other individuals? Because moving around like that can be a thrilling experience. You get to see incredible places, see more than some people get to their whole lives, but it also can be difficult at those young ages.
There were points in it where I didn't like it. When I got in high school, I didn't like the moving then, but I would say sports, in particular athletics, were just a big part of my life. So, the fitness aspect was just inherent to those activities, but I knew I liked that part of I liked the training. I enjoyed training. I liked practice, which is not always common. in athletics. A lot of athletes don't enjoy the process of getting to the competition. I always like that part in addition to it. So it just kept us busy. We're always busy playing sports throughout the year, and it was always mimicked and in our lives. So it was just something that I kind of didn't have a life without it. And as I said in my speech, my parents were just very encouraging. They always pushed us towards it. My dad in particular was like, make your something you really enjoy doing your job. And they never talked to me about how much money I would make doing it or anything. They didn't care about that. They just wanted us to be happy. And I really appreciate that, because that's not always the common thing with parents and their children.
No, actually, I just interviewed Christine Conti, and she spoke to exactly that, where she had the complete opposite, a parent that was like, you need to kind of have that life script, and this is the degree you should get, and this is why, so that you can have your pension. And so to be able to have parents that nurture that passion element, and that it's not just about the dollars, because the thing is when we thrive, generally that tends to come with it anyways as we go. But a lot of our life is spent working. I think we might as well tie it to something where we're going to get enjoyment out of it at the same time.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I just think like you're not here for a long time in life, and why do something that is miserable for you? I mean, in the scheme of the universe and the cosmos and human history, we're here for like literally no time. So why would you do something that's horrible during that very small amount of time?
Right? Life is but a hiccup, but within that hiccup, at some point, you went from family, really passionate about physical activity, obviously something you enjoyed. Where did the bridge happen where you were like, I think this might be a path I want to educate into and make a career?
Definitely in college. And I was a collegiate track and field athlete in college, and I was kinesiology as my bachelor's degree, and exercise leadership emphasis, and just I was going through all of the coursework, and while I was also a runner, and I just felt like this just seems like natural to me. Like everybody else on my team was like a business major or computer science, and I was like, I want no part of that. It's like
you're like, see you later, suits.
Yeah, I mean, we had nothing in common in terms of like where we're headed professionally, but I just felt like, man, I'm just going to do what feels right for me. And it always just being around other athletes and then learning how my body, other people's bodies respond, acutely, chronically to exercise, just always fascinated me. And I just went towards that because it just felt like this is what I should be doing.
Well, and what were the first steps then that you took coming out of your education to really niche into that space?
I was in education a really long time because I went straight through from my bachelor's all the way through my doctorate, didn't take a break. And during that time, I didn't really start working till around 2001 when I started training at a faculty staff fitness facility. So as a graduate assistant, I was tasked with running this facility that all of my professors and other staff attended. So
cool.
While they were teaching me upstairs in Godwin Hall, I was downstairs when they would come in, and I would train some of them. It was kind of weird.
Oh, but you got to put them through their paces. I bet some of those profs were nervous to give you like a grade that wasn't up to par.
Well, it's strange because like when you see someone in a certain way, when they're teaching you about hormones and metabolism, and you're learning about exercise physiology, and everybody's so confident when they're teaching it. And then when it comes down to like the actual exercise part of it and going through it, I realized very quickly a lot of people, even if they have a lot of knowledge in it, doesn't mean that they're consistent in it or they have a lot of confidence in it. And that was like my first understanding of like, there's a disconnect here and I want to explore this more. And the first client I ever trained was in that environment in 2001. And it came to me very easy. And I thought, oh, I'm good at this. Like, this is something I can walk into. And obviously it took me a long time to get much better, but I felt natural training people one-on-one. It was like, it fit immediately.
Did you find the educator side in you? Would you have client cases where then after you're like, oh, I want to research this particular thing that we're going through? Because you've collected such a wealth of knowledge along the way.
It's the strange part, I would say, like the hardcore science of it and the educational aspect of it, I didn't really use that much in terms of like speaking with people. I still don't. Most of it, and I learned as I went through my education, my master's degree was in kinesiology as well, but I figured it out pretty early that this is a relationship game. It's
Mhm.
good. It's great to have all of the technical knowledge, and I have that. But in terms of making a living and working with people, you have to understand people, the psychology of humans. And that's why I focused on behavior modification for my doctorate in those settings, because I figured this is how I'm going to have a career, is by learning how people behave, what do they desire, and how could I be an intervention or a tool to help them find what they want and what is desirable for them in this. And it may not be getting fitter. I actually don't think most people come into it to get this high level fitness. I think they want companionship, they want a confidant, they want someone to care about them, to be a part of their lives. And I figured that out very early. That's a big part of it, you know.
Yeah. What were kind of the key learnings that you've taken with you as you started to study that? Because you're not wrong. And I mean, even today, I'm seeing such a narrative shift within the industry as a whole, which I think is really refreshing. I know when I grew up, it was a lot of pressure on body image, and that was kind of
Mhm.
the only advertising you would ever see in the space. Get shredded this many days to like melt off the fat. The language was not
Yeah.
ideal. And truthfully, I think we're seeing, especially coming through a mental health crisis right now, how much people are leaning on our spaces for community, giving ourselves that space to have mental clarity. So, what were some of the key behaviors that you would see that were worth, like those little nuggets where you're like, we can build a relationship here and work you toward the goals?
I think early on, gosh, maybe 20 years ago, since I started training, just how quickly people latch on to you and how they want to know about your life and how quickly you start building a friendship with people. And I said, oh, okay, this is more than just training. Like, this is the exercise is the price of admission, but people stay for the relationship. And that was comforting to me because I felt that was my strength. That's what made it easy for me initially, was just the chatting, the talking, while keeping people moving in their exercise progression. For that, I said, this is just relationship building 101. This is basic counseling. This is interpersonal relationships. This is resilience building. All the things that I felt were naturally inherent to my gifts as a person in this industry. So I was like, it's great to know all of the science behind it. You should definitely know that. But the greatest trainers I've ever seen were just warm, empathetic, kind people who realized that exercise was another part of it, but it actually wasn't the main part of it.
Well, and on the client side, what were some of the key behaviors that you would see and probably still notice that need to be addressed out of the gate in order to see maximum success?
I think just a lot of misconceptions that people have, like many trainers, a lot of clients come to you for weight loss. And one of the biggest things is just kind of reprogramming that exercise is not a great vehicle for weight loss. And you should reframe how we're looking at this relationship. And if it's about weight loss, and well, the research is very clear. It's the statistically very small percentage of weight loss comes from exercise. So let's come up with a different reason for why we're doing this, and let's come up with like the really honest reason, and not the one that the messaging and the marketing and the advertisements are telling you. Let's find your actual reason, as some people will call your why, and let's dig into that. And then once you know that, the expectations will form around that.
I imagine such a connection is built too when you are interacting with someone and give them the space to explore that, because sometimes there's a lot of power in the question because it may not even be something they've asked themselves. A lot of times I feel in life, we've got a blinder on to maybe what our deep seated why is. And then when somebody keeps saying, let's dig deeper, I'm sure there's some emotional conversations that come out of that too.
Well, man, I've had plenty of those throughout my time. I mean, there's been a lot of crying, a lot of laughing, um, a lot of anger, a lot of joy, all these. I mean, good training is partially talk therapy, I think the good thing for me is I have a lot of education in that area, and I'm more qualified to provide that and understand the different techniques for that. So, you're going to get everyone's best shot emotionally when you're working with them, because often the things that they tell you, they even have trouble telling their significant others, their friends, their family. So you're getting their best shot. And so you have to be very well versed in that. And this is why I'm a big proponent of service providers in any profession, but especially in what we do, to have a really good understanding of their own emotional and social compass, and that they're working on themselves so that you can be the best version of yourself with other people when they're coming out at you with their best shot and all these things.
Well, and I know that that's something that you still abide by, because I was listening to some of your recent podcast episodes and some of your solo casts, and one that you just released quite recently. It was like, this is how I'm spending my summer, team. I am working on my knowledge base and adding to the book collection. I mean, that self-work really shouldn't end.
No, there's a formal education, which I think is important. And I mean, I have a lot to say about that in our industry, but
let's hear it after.
Yeah, we could hear about it. It's definitely, I think there's other people who are in the same boat, but I tend to be a little more controversial in the industry. I'm very critical of our industry. And most people that know me, they know that I am. I don't apologize for it. I think you got to have a good self-reflective lens in order to move forward. And we've done a lot of not great things, and we're doing a lot of good things for that. But we definitely have to improve. And if you've been in athletics, part of improving your performance is breaking down your performance. And if you don't break down your performance, look at the tape. What have you been doing well? What haven't you been doing well? And I feel like in our industry, we're not looking at the tape enough. We got to see what jumps off the page when you look at our industry, the marketing, the messaging, the messengers, who's put out there in front, who's in the back. Like, I just would rather be more critical to move forward than just to go, well, it is what it is, just deal with it.
What are some of the things in particular that you've been strongly trying to vocalize or advocate for?
I think there's several things.
Fitness World's 16 British Columbia high-value, low-cost gyms are committed to helping people reach their fitness goals, whatever those may be. Exercise and movement play a pivotal role in supporting people's overall health and wellness, and it is Fitness World's mission to provide the facilities, services, and amenities to help you achieve your fitness your way. Visit fitnessworld.ca for more information.
One, we need to stop operating in silos. All the certification companies, any of you guys who are listening to this, I'm talking about you, all of you. You need to stop working in a silo. NSCA, ACE, ACSM, NASM, just name all the letters in there. Everybody's working in silos. And in fact, an IDEA, there's no reason the NSCA and IDEA should have had their conferences on the same weekend, which was a bad decision. It made people choose which one they had to go to. So we have to stop that. And I will say, with IDEA is doing a hell of a job of really trying to change that. On the back end, I really think they're giving a lot of effort. And that is bearing fruit. Is that ACSM and IDEA is basically merging together for the PTI Institute, Personal Training Institute, which is great. Why haven't we done this before, right? It's a leadership issue. And I think we have better leadership now. But we got to stop working in silos. We need to start working together. And we need a minimum criteria for entry. Mm-hmm. We do not have one. We have lots of certifications. The rigorousness of each is debatable. And I think that we need to have one minimum criteria. And a lot of people talk about this, but have no solutions. I have a solution. I'd rather have a solution, at least put it out there. I think that four-year colleges are cost prohibitive to most people trying to become trainers. You don't need it. And generally, it's just too costly. I'm a big proponent of community college associate programs, which are either free or greatly reduced, super inexpensive as a minimum entry level, and then sitting for the certification, or the program being the standard to get your certification as part of that program. 2-year commitment for a lifetime of work, very inexpensive, not contributing to any debt or very little debt, and at least would be a standard minimum entry that would not affect all the certifications money, because let's be honest, Chrissy, it comes down to money. People don't want to part
1,000%.
with their money, right? 1,000%.
Especially
Follow the
today in
money.
the economic climate, it's like, and oftentimes it does not trickle down from the top. And if
It
it's
does
going
not.
to ever, it will take a very long time till you've worked toward that.
Yeah, we're not changing these organizations in terms of like uniting all these certifications. I don't believe that's going to happen, but I do believe we could have a better minimum standard criteria that all people enter in through. I mean, you have more rigorous standards to cut people's hair.
True. You're not wrong.
That's crazy. I mean, and big shout out to people who do, that's awesome profession, but why can't we be in line with that?
I mean, you're not wrong, especially in the fact that right now I spoke to that narrative shift that's happening. And I know that there is a big push, and I'm a believer of this for sure, because I know how fitness has changed my life, but having it as part of the healthcare continuum. I mean, we know the physical inactivity crisis, we know the mental health crisis. If we want to continue to perpetuate the message that exercise is medicine and all these great benefits that can happen in our lives, it would make a lot of sense that those that are able to deliver that knowledge do have a standard formal minimum bar of education. And whether people want to re-up on their skills after that, have at her. And never mind, now I got to know, what's your opinion on all these social media trainers with zero credentials?
Well, I mean, I think they're just trying to get into a space that is unregulated. I mean, I actually have been in some pretty interesting meetings where I think we as an industry, again, I'm going to be critical against us. I'm part of it, so I'm not criticizing people outside of myself. And I've done this, but I've really made a shift on this, is we criticize social media trainers or influencers. But I've actually spent a lot of time meeting a lot of people in that space. And they want to be a part of our space.
They do.
But they feel criticized by many of us who are in an ivory tower and turn our noses up and look down upon them. That's not how you unite people. That's not how you change things. So talking poorly about those folks is not going to change. I would rather talk poorly about how we're not doing a good job as an industry. and how we have a language problem too, Chrissy. I think that's the other thing. We have a language problem. We keep saying exercise is good for you, exercise is good for you, but we don't delineate between exercise, physical activity, and movement. They're three different things. It's just a catchphrase. Exercise is good for you. Not everybody wants to exercise. Some people just want to be physically active. There's a difference. And so,
some people need to go no fit to low fit. Like getting out for a walk is going to make a really big difference if you're somebody that's living their life sedentary and indoors all the time and can have tremendous benefits. I mean, I think back to COVID, and that's all of a sudden gyms are closed, and I'm not a trainer or I'm an enthusiast extraordinaire, and was kind of like, okay, what now? And then you start to reconnect with all those accessible foundations that feel good to get the body and the mind moving. What are some of the other things that you're really trying to push for? Because again, you do have this massive educational background in the space. And on top of that, over 2 decades of experience working within it. And before you do get to it, I will say, I do agree. I interview a lot of influencers in the space for this podcast, and they are the vessels to get more people introducing movement, physical activity, and exercise should they choose into their lives. So it is important to have them part of the conversation, because at the end of the day, that aside from the ones where it's very heavily diet culture, because I personally have a problem with that.
Same here.
And I mean, I understand it because a lot of us grew up on it. And if you haven't unlearned certain behaviors, I can understand. I've been part of the cycle before in the past. I was a competitor and I was the one posting my deficit meals to the high heavens, but it was like the phase, right? And I'm glad that I did it. I learned a lot from the experience, but definitely was guilty of giving a poor message into these spaces that negatively impacted people. And I can wear that and own that for certain. But we need to unite the voice. But what are some other things that you're strongly pushing to bring to the forefront, especially now that you have this added accolade where even more voices are tuning in?
Well, I think that redefining the education, taking that step further, is making our educational standards for fitness professionals more human-centered and more, honestly, more love-centered with people. It's like we've just spent so much time focusing on chronic adaptation, acute adaptation, sliding filament theory, all these different things. They're great. The disclaimer, these are not bad things. They're great foundational information. These do not make you a great trainer, though. They don't give you a long-term career, generally speaking, as a person. This is your everyday trainer I'm talking about. Hey, if you're exercise physiologist, you work in a hospital, all this stuff, probably very different. But a lot of people working in the industry are everyday trainers, group exercise instructors. The majority of what they do is working with humans on a very social, emotional level, spiritual level. More education that's centered on that. Some people would call it soft skills. Again, I think it's poor languaging because it makes it seem like it's not great. Oh, these are the soft skills, not
as important.
Not as important, right? I hear people say that's like the language part is really important. I think the other big initiative is that we need to give people permission to feel okay about not wanting to be physically active. This sounds very counterproductive. I know that I'm saying this.
Yeah, I'm like, let's hear this.
But this is, I'm going to give you the hot takes, Chrissy.
I love it. I'm so here for it.
I'm not giving you the same old stuff.
Nothing less.
Hot takes here only. I think the big thing is we're not telling the proper story. Now, listen, I'll set this up a little bit. The wonderful Elaine was out there. She's awesome, man, incredibly inspiring. And her late husband, Jack LaLanne, incredible kind of vanguard, the beginning of a lot of the modern aspect of fitness. But this is not our true fitness story. This is not the story of fitness. The story of fitness is ancient. It involves ancient human beings. And that our story of exercise, we need to tell this story when we're educating people, is that humans are energy conservationists. All of us are. We are a product of our DNA and our history, which is that what we're currently doing for exercise, specifically exercise, was never meant for us to do. We conserve our energy historically in order to survive, to build dwellings, to hunt for food, reproduce, digging, tubing, all these things. So now we're in a time where we have more convenience than ever, but less reason to be active for survival. In developed countries, we don't need to do exercise for survival anymore. So it is a common, understandable reason to not want to exercise. Every person has it here and there at different points in their life. So giving people permission to say it's okay to feel this way. That's just a basic psychological. We're validating your feelings for that. And there's tremendous biological and anthropological evidence to that fact. So let's go further back and tell the real story and then tell people we're doing something you were never meant to do. But hey, tough luck. We got to do it at this point because humans are not going backwards. We're not going back to cart and buggies. You know,
I mean, it's been strange times, so never say
strange,
never.
unless the grid is destroyed and we all have to become manual labor, folks. Again, this is not going to happen. Our current reality is convenience is generally the thing that's happening. We've traded convenience and we've lost a lot of our activity. So, you know, we have to do these things. Gyms are foreign to your biological identity. Going for a run just to do it for the purpose of health is so ridiculous to your body and to our history. I'm giving you different takes here. I'm telling you.
I love this actually. And it's fascinating too. And what you're saying makes a lot of sense. And I mean, innately, it's like the bodies and the minds remember. I feel like we remember where we come from. So it would make sense that there would be that resistance.
Yeah, and everyone has that resistance. Even if you're, you know, like us and you love exercising or, you know, it's been part of your life, there's still those moments and times when you don't want to do anything.
Oh, 1,000%. I just came out of that. I tore my hamstring spectacularly doing karaoke.
Wow. Okay.
As one does. It's an extreme sport.
Aggressive dancing.
It was aggressive dancing. I have learned you should stretch before you do that. But because of that, it took me a while to kind of wind up back into my routine. I felt that resistance. And I'm somebody, you know, for at least the last 7 years of my life have been very routine, very habitual. But because of that, my mindset was like, clearly it's like starting the lawnmower where you're like, tick, 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 not going.
That's
tick,
right.
Tick, 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 not going. So I did instead of getting the lawnmower repaired, I hired a coach. Like I hired a trainer as well, because I'm like, even somebody that's been in it for ages, I needed that external accountability to actually get fired up and started again. And that's somebody that's a self-professed lover of fitness.
Yep. And this is literally the majority of the world. There's a very small percentage of humans who are self-starters, who can create enough intensity on their own to meet to satisfy all of the different needs of different biological systems for improvement. For that, it's okay. We all have these feelings. They're very deep, ancient feelings that we have. So let's just tell the real story, and let's not, tell, oh, at this time, and Billy Blanks was great too. Billy Blanks and Jane Fonda, these are all great things, but this is not the origin of our fitness story. It actually is a very ancient story, and we should honor that and understand it, but then know that we cannot stay there. And that's the real crux. We have to override this system because society is not letting us go backwards in terms of our manual labor-based society. It's becoming more automated. It's becoming more convenience-based. I mean, you think I'm 45, and I think of a future when I was in my 20s where my food would just come to me through Uber in minutes.
Right.
I could have a better option for a cab being Uber. I mean, I could do my banking online. Everything literally at my fingertips. I could stream movies. I can have thousands of movies in one platform versus when I used to go to get things out of the, Blockbuster.
Yes.
And I had to check the movie out or wait for the movie.
You would ask, has it come back yet?
Has it come back yet? Yes. And all the people, the creepers and Blockbuster, everybody's looking for the movie. Don't get that movie. I want that movie. It's like,
totally. Well, I actually was going through an old box of photos and had to laugh because there is a photo of me with a gigantic caller ID. And I'm smiling because I was like, this is revolutionary. Right. I will know who is calling.
I will know who is calling. It's like, we're just trying to make life easier all the time. So, but there's a trade-off to that, and I think we just need to be very aware of that.
I think it's an important perspective that you've shared with me as well, because I'm definitely somebody that shares the exercise as medicine. And I do stand by the statement because I know it's life-changing when you do actually start the engine and go for it for a lot of people. And again, I say that from a social, mental, and physical space for sure. Plus, to me, I've always had the philosophy, if I'm gifted a body that can maneuver freely, very blessed and lucky, that is a privilege. And to me, I'm like, if I can push it to discover if it can do more or to make it stronger, that is a very exciting venture for me. Yes. But the reason I really appreciate you sharing your perspective is because it helps me, and who's listening as well, understand, even in myself entering this space or for others that are entering this space, anytime we start an exercise or a physical activity or movement journey, when it has been that lull, it makes sense why a lot of people start out probably feeling inadequate out of the gate or like a failure out of the gate.
Yeah. And I just validate that with people. I'm like, totally normal feeling. Everyone feels that way. I gave you permission to feel this way. Now you can't stay here. You cannot stay here. It's much like in therapy. You can tell your therapist all the issues and problems you have going on, but at some point you have to do something to change. Or, newsflash, you have to start getting real with where you're currently at, accepting your reality. If you want to change your reality, you have to change it or just accept it where it is. That's the sticking point for a lot of people.
Definitely. And as somebody that has had a stellar career as a personal trainer, what would you say is the big importance to adding that to our arsenal of basically reprogramming the fact that, yes, we live in an era of convenience, but how helpful can that external motivation and that guidance be for people and clients that you're working with?
And I think that the majority of people, whether they're using, a trainer or someone for a really long time or a short period of time, having guidance is really important in life. I mean, I've had many wonderful mentors in my life and people I've called upon and resources of things that I use. I say in my solo cast, I'm reading this book on mastery, the science of mastery. How do I get better? How does someone get better at something? What are the resources you need to use? It does not make you weak to need help. But people build up barriers. These barriers could be, I'm not fit enough to do this. I don't have enough money, or this and that. I think when you break all these things down, there's usually enough of all those things. If unless there's a really severe situation, there's ways to maneuver around that. But everyone needs guidance. And I mean, if you want to look at it, very high level athletes have coaches. They're not doing,
1000%.
listen, I've been around athletes, very high level athletes in my collegiate career, not as much lately, but athletes are no different than any other people. They have a lot of flaws. They need a lot of coaching, both mentally, physically, socially, emotionally. And when you meet people who are in that level, you realize they suffer from all the same things everyone else does. They need coaching. You definitely need it. Like for them too. It's like I always thought I'm like, man, I mean, the greatest golfers, the greatest basketball, everyone has a coach. They need a coach. They depend upon it for that. Obviously, they have a different financial situation, but there are ways to make that work, ways to have some guidance and then have some other options with that. But I'm a big proponent, not just because I'm in the industry and it's my way I make my living, but everyone needs guidance.
Yeah.
And to say you don't, I think is doing yourself a real disservice, especially with exercise and physical activity, because we have the stigma that it's my body. I should know how to work with my body. But it's
no one's
also
read the instruction manual. Let's be honest.
And listen, I know it's a personal thing to you, right? But there's a lot of science to it. There's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of social elements to it. There's a lot of psychology and there's a lot of information you're just not privy to when you don't have the guidance. And you can look it up on Google and do all these things you want to do. It is not the same. I promise you it's not the same.
Well, that's like when ChatGPT was then OpenAI in the beginning of this year or late winter last year.
Sure.
And I started playing around just out of mere curiosity. And you're like, yeah, can it build you a workout plan and you can prompt it with all your stats? Sure, absolutely. Can you have it give you a matching nutrition plan with all the recipes? Without a doubt. But let's face that information is all out there anyways. It has been out there. It is freely out there. If we were going to do it, we would be doing it already.
I know. We're not suffering from lack of information. That was like the early 2000s when people was like, well, there's not enough information on the internet. Like, what do I find? We're suffering from a filtering problem right now. We're filtering through enormous amounts of information, and we don't know whether it's reputable or not. But there's nothing like staring someone else in the eye and feeling their emotion and feeling their sincerity and their care for you. Now, if you start losing that, you start losing what it means to be a human and have a relationship with someone. That is what you need. That's what people need. You're coming to train because you want to be in better condition, but you're generally staying because you want to have a good relationship with someone.
Mm-hmm. Be seen, be heard, exchange, be a listener as well. It really is an exchange. Especially it's tremendous when you get to create those relationships with longstanding clients. I know that you had one that actually sent a video at IDEA, and that was a longtime client of yours. Talk to me about what that type of feedback means to you, especially as someone you've really invested so much in this career. I can tell, I don't know you personally, but I know you care.
I definitely care. I mean, it was a big part of like, I just went up there and winged it. You know, I have no clue what I'm going to say. I just walk up there and speak from my heart. And I didn't know that video was coming at all.
Oh, that's great.
So that was a huge surprise. I was like, whoa, I'm seeing it like everyone else is seeing it for the first time. It was very emotional. But that person, Dr. Courtney Warren, is a very well-known psychologist. And just her words were so honest. And, you know, we've developed a very long-term relationship over 10 years. We trained most of her family, as she said, her family, best friend, her aunt, you know, her daughter. And that's what I want. That's what I go for, is those type of relationships where we're growing together. You know, her daughter's 10, and I remember training Courtney when she was pregnant with her daughter.
Oh, that's incredible.
And so, like, the genesis of life. And then now working with this child who's talking to me while we're training and asking me about her mother and I's relationship, and when did we start working together, and was I in my mommy's belly when you were training her? I'm like, you were. And I was like, you heard my voice.
Yeah.
You heard my voice early in your life before you were born, and that's special. My client, Mike, who I mentioned during the ceremony, who's been with me for 17 years, incredible human being, has just done so much for me. And, I get emotional thinking about, like, when I met him, he was younger than I am now. And he was going through a big divorce. And I remember him telling me, Darian, you were one of the biggest things that helped me during that year. Like, our training sessions helped me get through a pretty rough time in my life. That's why I do it. That's why just to have those type of relationships. I was training his kids when they were like 9, they're like 25, 26 now. And just seeing them and talking to them, like, that's the beauty of having a long-term training career. If you do it well and you create good relationships, you're going to meet not only your clients, but you're going to meet their family, their friends, everyone that's important to them in their lives. And one of the things that I do is, my whole business is 100% live virtual. I switched to that in 2017. So even the people who had been with me in person all switched too. This is before the pandemic, well before. And it's been nice to just have people from all over the United States and some international. And I visit them all. I go to see them in person. I have dinner with them. We do a happy hour. I cement the relationship. I create the glue so that we continue to have a strong bond always. And so it's more than training. So it's just critically important.
I mean, adding so much value to their lives, but I can tell that you are getting so much as well from that, because it does become a symbiotic relationship. And I'm sure it's something that just continues to propel you forward. And when we think of moving forward, you spoke about some of the things in the industry that we most definitely should look at, and provided some really valuable feedback of what that could look like. But when you think of future of fitness, what are some of the things that excite you moving ahead?
I think one of the things that excites me is the future of the digital space even more. I've done a few presentations on this, but obviously I think people look at like VR and augmented reality as options for the future. And I think the pandemic, while really devastating and difficult, and definitely want to acknowledge that, and any crisis, there always are things that come through that are silver linings. And in our industry, I think more people gain respect for the digital space, and that you can give people an excellent exercise session, training session through a digital platforms. And I know there has been some resistance in our industry with that, but I would encourage people to continue to look into it, because in addition to augmented reality, VR, holographic based training is coming, most definitely. And there's a company in LA, I believe Portal, and they have a gigantic holographic machines that it looks like I'm right there with you. Now they're like $60,000 a piece, but listen, the first video conferencing technology did not come out through like Skype and all these. Again, let's tell the real history. It was back in, I believe, in the New York Fair, way back in like the 40s, 50s, actually. And it worked for like 10 minutes, but it was so cumbersome and so expensive that people didn't use it. This isn't new technology, by the way, that we're doing. It's just affordable now and higher end. But I see the same thing happening where holographic technology becomes more affordable over time, and that your trainer, your fitness professional, your group X instructor, your health coach, whoever it may be, will literally be next to you as a holograph, indistinguishable almost from reality, in your home or wherever you'd like to be, on vacation, in Hawaii, whatever, pick the location. And you'll continue to strengthen the relationship and move that forward. And I think it's actually a beautiful thing, because it allows us as professionals to meet the needs of more people, and not just the people who are in our vicinity. That's how we meet the world a bit more.
Yeah, well, and I think it really just speaks to the importance of building those relationships, because I don't know how I would feel about a stranger holograph in my space.
Yeah,
You're like, this is the future.
I think it could happen. I mean, I have several clients that I've actually never met in person, and we have extremely deep relationships. And we say all these nice, wonderful things to each other all the time. And I look at it in many ways. Adopting a new technology is much like adopting a child. And I can speak from experiences. My daughter, who I talked about during the presentation, Rosie, my wife and I adopted her when she was a month old. And adoption is incredible because once you love something, the biology fades and you acknowledge their biology and you make sure they know about their roots. But there are different ways to love someone than just the standard way. And there are different ways to train someone than what we've always been used to. And we can't be scared to go into the unknown and try new things and to meet people in different ways. We've always done that throughout our history as humans. We found different ways to move forward. This is just a different way. And I encourage my colleagues to embrace it.
Well, and especially an industry that's rooted in creating positive change for people's lives. It's one that you would hope doesn't see the resistance in embracing these changes as we go, because they're going to happen. I mean, I remember when I saw the first ad for an iPhone and I was like,
Yeah.
a touchscreen phone's not going to exist. Preposterous. BlackBerry keyboard for life.
Yeah.
And then I was like,
Right.
here we are.
Here we are. Imagine, June 7th, 2007 was when the first iPhone came out.
Yeah.
And look where we're at in 2023, August 1st, 2023. Who doesn't have a smartphone at this point?
Exactly.
Whether it's Samsung, iPhone, whatever it is a digital prosthesis for most people. And the future may be even more wild. I've said this to many people. I don't believe phones will be around forever. I think that there's a merging of technology and that we're becoming more the machines more and more. It's just going to look different in the future. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I think we should be open to all the ideas. I'm not sure all the ideas are good ideas for humans, but we as a people, we keep moving forward, and I will expect some pretty crazy, outrageous things for the future within our lifetimes,
Well, I think it just all accelerates faster and faster. The more knowledge base, it's like this big snowball that's going. Yeah. One thing I do know for sure is Mrs. Birmingham was wrong. And I do have a calculator in my pocket. So take that statistics class.
Take that. Yeah. I mean, math, everybody just looks up stuff. I mean, remember when you couldn't just look things up?
Oh, yeah.
Like at a whim? I mean,
dusty encyclopedia. And
I tell my daughter that all the time. I was like, you can just think about, I don't know this. And you look it up. I was like, you had to give effort. Like you had to go to the library.
Oh, and the theories you would have if you just filled in the blanks yourself. You start repeating a story from Sam at lunch hour and then find out 10 years later, factually highly incorrect.
Yeah. And the people who knew a lot actually gave a lot of effort to learning things. You actually had to read books. You had to go to places. That's kind of my whole thing is like, it's like we're almost trying to take the effort out of everything. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure that's a good thing.
No, I agree. It's very easy to subscribe to that type of lifestyle. And I think even more so the generations that keep coming up in behind us, instilling the effort mindset is probably a good idea, because when you think of everything that they're growing up, the access is just going to be tremendous. Think of when they're our age, what is the world even going to look like?
Well, there'll be different people too, because you're meeting people at just a snapshot of who they are. Like I'm meeting Chrissy Van as Chrissy Van right now, but I don't know who you were 20 years ago. I mean, you may have been a very different person.
I hope so.
I hope
that's
so
the goal,
too, right? I mean, and so, I would think that their attitudes, mindsets will be changing, especially as you start taking on family, different friendships, different adversity in your life. It changes the type of person you are. But the technology will continue to move forward, and we're in for a wild future. I'm telling you. I think it's in fitness too.
Buckle up.
Buckle up. And I'm happy for it, because I think we need more options for jobs for fitness professionals instead of just, as you know, maybe in the past it was primarily commercial-based gyms. And, your Gold's Gym, your Bally's back in the day, now your Lifetime Fitness, these very large gyms. And, you can get a job, but it's very difficult. The hours are very rough. And I think more and more trainers are becoming more entrepreneurial and seeing these digital spaces as an option to divorce yourself from a gym and to have a better lifestyle. That's what I use. That's why I went all virtual, live virtual, because I just wanted to have more time with my family, and I wanted to just enjoy my life more, and I didn't want to be on the wheel all the time. So it's worked out for me. It's not for everyone, but I think if you have more options for people in the business, they're more likely to stay in the business than to drop out and do a different profession.
Definitely. And I mean, we know this is a profession that does create a positive change, a positive ripple effect. You are someone that's surrounded by love within your own family unit, and especially those where you have created the change in their lives. I do end each podcast with a favorite quote or nugget of wisdom. So what do you have for me? I love kind of putting people in the hot seat. Hot takes to the hot seat.
Hot takes, hot seat. I would say this kind of goes to the book I've been reading about the mystery of mastery and about greatness. And I came up with this. Okay. I didn't get this from any quote book. This is my own quote. Okay. But I used to say this with my staff when I was running a fitness club for a long time. I said, listen, greatness magnifies mediocrity. When you separate yourself and you master something, you become great. It magnifies when things aren't going well. And so if you want to be great, you've got to put in the time, the effort, the commitment, the times when no one cares what you're doing, when you're not in the spotlight. Getting a big award like I got, that's like the time, that's my only time in the spotlight. It's not like I'm out there and oh yeah, this and that. Like, it was a great validation, but most of my work is done basically in the shadows between me and another person. Greatness does magnify mediocrity. So if you see somebody who's doing something great, and you want to do it, may magnify back on yourself to like, maybe I need to step my game up. When something's great and when something's mediocre. Some really big greatness magnifies when people aren't on the same level for that. If you want to be on the same level, you want to get to the peak, you've got to do things that other people aren't willing to do for that. And really push that.
1000%, Darian. I so appreciate your time. And again, a massive congratulations, because it is a really special honor when you get to stand amongst your peers that are walking through all the evolutions of this industry alongside of you, heading into a future that who the hell knows in 20 years what it's going to look like, but we're going for the ride anyways. Exactly. That's the joy, right? It's the spice of life. And I don't think either of us would have it any other way, but I really appreciate you carving out the time and space and instilling some good advice, some really good feedback, and some exciting outlooks for the future as well.
Thank you, Chrissy. I really appreciate it. And thanks for everything you're doing in the industry and covering IDEA and talking to all of my colleagues and stuff. I mean, it's just a wonderful thing you're doing. Thank you for doing that.
You've just listened to All Things Fitness and Wellness. This episode was brought to you by Fitness World. Your fitness, your way. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you never miss out on hearing from industry thought leaders and influencers. We are on a mission to help everyone live a life fit and well.